I guess she won't fight back anyway. That was the first thing I heard. My daughter's voice, sharp, careless, and spoken as if I weren't a living, breathing human on the other side of the door. Just words tossed into the night like I didn't mean anything. The disrespect hit me harder than the cold air slipping under the doorframe. I froze, not from fear, but from a sudden, steadying clarity that washed over me like a slow tide. Before you scroll, take a breath. This story will stay with you long after the final line. Let me tell you what happened that night, and why it changed me forever. It was 1:13 a.m. when I stepped closer, the digital clock on my living room wall glowing in the dark with that soft green light older women like me always keep around for comfort. I couldn't sleep, not really. Women my age rarely do. We carry worry like a spare blanket, heavy, warm in the wrong places. I had been sitting on my recliner with an old blanket around my legs, flipping through channels with the sound low, when a faint thud made me lower the remote and listen. Then her voice. Then the whisper of fabric rubbing against the door. Then the breath, quick, uneven, right on the other side. I moved slowly, careful not to make the floor creak. The wood in this house gives away everything. The time of day, the mood of the walker, the weight of the burden they carry. But tonight I stepped lightly, almost floating, guided more by instinct than fear. My fingers trembled as I touched the doorframe, not because I was panicking, but because part of me still couldn't believe what I knew deep down. My daughter wasn't here to see me. She wasn't here to check on me. Something darker had been brewing for a long time. I could feel it even before this night. I looked through the peephole. And there they were. My daughter stood with her shoulders squared, her chin tight, her eyebrows pressed together in that impatient way she gets when she convinces herself she's right. Beside her, my son-in-law gripped the handle of an axe. Not a large forest axe. No, this one was a common household one, the kind people keep in garages next to old paint cans and lawn care tools. But in his hands, under the porch light, it looked heavier, more deliberate. He had one hand wrapped tightly around the handle. The veins in his forearm bulged. His breath fogged the cold night air. He wasn't shaking. That scared me more than the axe itself. People shake when they're nervous. He wasn't nervous. He was ready. My daughter glanced back at him and whispered, "Just knock louder. She's old. She probably didn't hear the first time." Old. I exhaled slowly, a controlled breath, the kind you learn to take after years of keeping yourself composed in rooms where everyone else expects you to stay quiet. I stepped back slightly, not retreating, just giving myself space to think. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I didn't even gasp. Instead, I felt an unsettling calm slide through me. A calm I didn't recognize at first. But it was mine. It sat low in my chest like a warm stone, heavy, grounding, familiar in a strange way. What they didn't know was that I had a small blinking red light in the corner of my ceiling, tucked just above the trim. It wasn't obvious, not unless you looked for it. It blended in with the paint. Most people didn't notice it. But I did. And I noticed it now, blinking its little heartbeat of light. I had installed it months ago. One of the few decisions I made quietly, answering to no one. And no, I didn't need to explain its purpose. Not then. Not now. My daughter lifted her hand, ready to knock again, but her husband stopped her with a quick jerk of his arm. He leaned in, murmuring something I couldn't hear, but the way she flinched told me everything. They were arguing. Not loudly, not stupidly. Just quietly, urgently, with the kind of tension that comes from wanting the same thing but disagreeing on how to get it. Another disrespect. Coming to my doorstep in the middle of the night like I owed them something. The porch light flickered, just once, but it created a long, shaky shadow of the axe stretching across the cement. The sight of it made something cold slide down my spine. A distant dog barked. A car passed on the far end of the street, its headlights briefly cutting across my curtains. I noticed everything. Nighttime sharpens senses, especially when danger stands 15 inches away. Then something inside my house caught my attention. A faint smell. Perfume. Not mine. A flowery scent. Cheap, sweet, too strong. My daughter's scent. My heart didn't skip. Psych. Someone had been inside earlier. My eyes scanned the room. The front part of the carpet looked disturbed. Not ripped or torn, just brushed differently as if someone had walked through with wet soles. A key lay on my kitchen counter. I never left keys there. And the back window had a smear on the glass, a smudge that wasn't there when I locked up for the night. They were already inside once. I touched the wall for balance, not because I felt faint, but because I felt the weight of truth settling onto my shoulders. I had suspected something for weeks. Strange phone calls. My daughter's sudden interest in my accounts. Her odd visits where she'd stay only long enough to look around, not talk. She never meant to stay. She came to search. I stepped closer again, lifting the peephole flap lightly. My daughter's posture had changed. She wasn't angry now. She looked determined. A firm kind of determination. The kind someone has when they finally gather the courage to do the ugliest thing they've been considering. Her husband held the axe tighter. His jaw clenched. He whispered, "Just be quick." My daughter looked unsure. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but she swallowed it. I watched her shoulders rise with a shaky breath. Then she faced the door again. "Mom?" she called softly, pretending to sound worried. "Mom, are you awake? It's cold out here." If I hadn't just seen the axe, I might have believed her. But the tone was off. Too polished. Too gentle. My daughter was many things, but gentle wasn't one of them. I pressed my palms flat against the door. I didn't know if she could sense me standing there, but I could almost feel the warmth of her presence on the other side. My own child, breathing hard, waiting for me to answer. I remembered when she was little how she used to knock on my bedroom door the same way. Soft, rhythmic taps, asking for help, asking for comfort. The sound echoed through my memory, making this moment cut deeper. But the ache didn't break me. It steeled me. My breath steadied again. I reached for the deadbolt. The metal clicked softly. My daughter took a step back, eyes widening. Not with fear, surprise. She didn't expect me to open it willingly. Her husband adjusted his grip on the axe. My daughter whispered something under her breath. Something frustrated, something sharp. I unlatched the top lock. Another click. This time they heard it clearly. My daughter straightened her shoulders, smoothing her hair back nervously. She glanced at the window beside the door as if checking whether any neighbors were awake. Her husband whispered, "Just do it fast." I placed my hand on the doorknob, feeling the cold metal under my palm. My heart didn't race. It thudded slowly, heavily, like it was grounding me in the moment. I turned the knob. The door opened only an inch, then another, until I pulled it just wide enough for the porch light to fall across my face. We locked eyes. My daughter's breath caught. Her husband tensed. The axe glinted. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. My daughter's expression trembled between shock and something that looked like guilt, but not quite. It wasn't remorse. It was the fear of being caught too soon. She opened her mouth to speak. And I stopped right there, holding the door with one hand, staring at the two people I never imagined I'd face like this. In the cold hallway light, with the night still holding its breath around us. I didn't resolve anything. I just stood still. Letting the moment stretch, letting her see that I wasn't scared. And letting myself feel, fully and sharply, the betrayal that had finally stepped out of the shadows. I stood there in the open doorway, staring at the two people I never imagined I'd face like that, and for a moment, none of us said anything. The porch light buzzed above us, flickering just enough to make everything look unstable, like the whole night was made of shaken pieces ready to fall apart. My daughter's mouth parted as if she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Her husband tightened his grip on the axe. They waited. I waited. The silence between us carried all the things we'd left unsaid over the years. But then something inside me, some old, buried instinct, told me to step back and close the door before any one of us crossed a line none of yous could come back from. I shut the door without a word. Not slamming it. Not shaking. Just a gentle close, as if I were ending a conversation I didn't need to be part of anymore. I didn't wait to see what they did next. My feet moved fast, quicker than they had in years, toward my bedroom. I didn't turn on any lights. The dark helped me think. Darkness calms me the way daylight never has. Maybe that's something I learned after my husband passed, learning to live alone in a big house that suddenly felt too quiet. Inside my bedroom, I reached for the small suitcase I kept under the bed. Every older woman keeps one. Not because we're running, but because we know life can change overnight and nothing stays guaranteed. I pulled it out, dusted off the handle, and opened it on the bedspread. Clothes first. Comfortable ones. 2 blouses. A sweater. My old walking shoes. Then the small folder I'd hidden behind my nightstand, the one with papers I had been reviewing quietly for weeks. Something had been off for a long time, long before tonight. I'd found signatures I didn't recognize, dates that didn't line up, little transactions that didn't feel like my own. I had planned to confront my daughter gently, maybe over coffee, maybe in daylight. But after seeing her tonight, I knew gentle wasn't going to solve anything. My phone buzzed on the dresser. I almost reached for it, thinking it might be my daughter calling, pretending to check on me, trying to restart her script. But it wasn't her. It was a voicemail reminder about a doctor's appointment. Life's little normal things that keep going even when your world tilts. I zipped the suitcase halfway, then paused. What else? What did I need? My medication. The charger. The envelope in the kitchen drawer. Not the one with recipes, the other one. The one I tucked behind the old birthday cards. I walked quietly to the kitchen, avoiding the window. Their shadows still moved outside, faint and restless. When I reached the drawer, I found the envelope exactly where I'd left it. Inside lay a copy of the deed, a list of account numbers, and a photograph my husband had taken years ago on a family trip. My daughter was smiling in that picture, carefree and bright. I stared at it for a long moment, wondering when that version of her had disappeared, or if maybe I had missed the signs. I felt something shift inside me, a small tremor of sadness mixing with acceptance. You raise children thinking your love protects them from turning into something cold. But life teaches you slowly, inch by inch, that love can guide a person only so far. The rest, they choose themselves. I put the photograph in the envelope and closed it. Not because I wanted to take the memory with me, but because leaving it behind felt too final. I wasn't ready for final, not yet. I returned to the bedroom, finished zipping the suitcase, and wrapped my coat around my shoulders. My keys jingled faintly in my hand. The noise made me flinch. I didn't want them hearing anything. I didn't know if they were still outside, but I wasn't going to risk checking. I headed toward the back door. The kitchen tiles were cold under my feet, the kind of cold that makes you aware of every step. I opened the door slowly, grateful it didn't squeak, and stepped into the yard. The grass was damp with night dew. The garden wind chime tinkled lightly in the breeze, sounding almost like a warning. I closed the door silently behind me and walked toward the gate. From the corner of my eye, I could see movement at the front of the house, shadows pacing, an argument in hushed tones. They hadn't realized I was leaving. Good. My car sat under the old oak tree at the end of the driveway, its silver surface catching just a bit of moonlight. I unlocked it, slipping inside quickly, placing my suitcase on the passenger seat. My breath clouded the inside of the car for a moment, fogging the glass. I wiped it with my sleeve. The engine turned on quietly. I backed out slow, keeping the headlights off until I reached the street. As the car began to roll forward, I finally turned the lights on, and that's when I saw it. A dark sedan parked a little too far from the curb. No lights. No movement. Just idling there, half hidden behind a row of bushes. I frowned. It wasn't a neighbor's car. I knew every car on this street. Older women always know. We pay attention to those things because patterns keep us safe. The sedan didn't move. No headlights flickered on. It just sat there, watching. I told myself it might be nothing. But the timing was too strange. The house. The axe. My daughter's nervous glances earlier. The way she checked the window as if expecting someone else. I put my car in drive and rolled forward. The sedan didn't follow. I hoped it wouldn't. But even as I told myself that, I felt a prickling sensation crawl up the back of my neck. The kind you get when danger brushes past you without making contact. When I reached the next intersection, I turned right. The sedan stayed put in the rearview mirror. I drove to a roadside motel off the highway, one with a flickering vacancy sign and peeling green paint. The kind of place where the carpet smells faintly of detergent, and the vending machine hums louder than it should. I parked close to the office and went inside. The night clerk barely looked up. He handed me a room key with a bored yawn. Room 14. The door groaned when I pushed it open, heavy from years of overuse. The room smelled like old fabric softener and stale coffee, but it felt safer than my house had in the last hour. I set my suitcase on the floor, locked the door behind me, and double-checked the window latch. Only then did I let myself breathe. But the peace didn't last long. As I sat on the edge of the bed, I pulled out my folder and spread the papers across the blanket. Bank statements. Copies of forms I didn't remember signing. Notes I jotted down over the last few weeks. Dates, times, odd phone calls, odd visits. My daughter's handwriting where it didn't belong. There were patterns. Intentional ones. A slow tightening around areas of my life that should have been private. I traced the timeline with my finger. It started months ago. Not tonight. Tonight was only the moment the mask slipped. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't used in years. A man my husband trusted. A retired investigator he once worked alongside. A man who'd helped us once before, decades ago, when a neighbor tried to claim part of our property line. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the call button. Would he even remember me? Would he think I was being dramatic? Was I being dramatic? No. Not after tonight. I pressed the button. The phone rang twice before he answered with a groggy voice. Hello. It's me, I said softly. I need your help. Something isn't right. There was a pause on the line, long and heavy. Then his voice sharpened. Where are you? A motel on Highway 7. Are you safe? I think so. Stay there, he said. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll be there in the morning. He ended the call before I could ask anything else. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. Not from fear exactly, but from the weight of everything that was finally coming together. The signatures. The strange visits. The axe. The sedan. All separate threads now pulling into one tangled knot. I turned off the lamp, letting the room sink back into darkness. The hum of the old air conditioner filled the silence. But as I lay down, something made my heart lurch. Outside my window. Headlights flashed briefly. A slow-moving car rolled past. Not fast. Not passing through. Just creeping. The same sedan from earlier. It didn't stop. It didn't accelerate. It simply glided through the lot like it was looking for someone. I pulled the curtain down quickly. My breath caught in my chest. Leaving my house hadn't removed me from danger. It had only shifted it into a new shape. And I realized as I sat there in the dark motel room with my suitcase at the foot of the bed, that this night, this long, cold night, was only the beginning. And for a while I just listened to the hum of the air conditioner, steady and low like it was trying to soothe me. But I couldn't let it. My hands rested on my knees, palms damp, and every few seconds I glanced toward the window, half expecting those headlights to roll past again. They didn't. Not yet. Still, tension sat heavy on my shoulders, pressing down like an old coat soaked in rain. I leaned forward, grabbed the folder from beside me and flicked on the small lamp by the bed. The light was dim, yellow, barely enough to read by, but I preferred it that way. Harsh lights felt too exposing. Too honest. I wasn't ready for honest. Not about tonight. Not about my own daughter. My eyes followed the lines of the documents spread across the blanket, each one a piece of something bigger, something I hadn't wanted to admit even to myself. I lifted a single page, one I'd stared at many times but never let sink in fully. A form with my name typed neatly, my signature scrawled at the bottom in a way that almost looked like my handwriting. Almost. The loops were wider. The pressure on the paper heavier. The slant different. It wasn't mine. I knew it. But seeing it tonight made my stomach twist. How many things had she signed without me? How long had she practiced copying my handwriting? The thought made my chest tighten. A sudden knock on the wall outside my room made me jump. It wasn't harsh, just a suitcase bumping into the neighbor's door, followed by muffled voices. My pulse slowed gradually, but the jolt had already left its mark, a tremor in my fingers I couldn't hide. I placed the paper down and pressed my palms together, squeezing until the shaking stopped. The silence returned, thicker now. I reached for my phone again and opened the call log. The investigator, Daniel, would be here in the morning. But morning felt too far away. Too many hours lay between now and then. And in those hours, anything could happen. My daughter could be searching. The sedan could return. The motel clerk could mention me to someone for a little cash. Trust became thin when fear sat in your bones. I stood up slowly, stretching my legs, and walked to the bathroom. The mirror above the sink showed a version of me I didn't recognize. Shadows under my eyes. Lips tight. Hair flattened on one side. A woman carrying too many years in a single night. I ran my fingers through my hair, smoothing it down, wondering when the lines on my forehead had gotten so deep. Someone once said stress ages you faster than time ever could. Maybe that was true. Maybe this night alone carved years into me. I splashed cool water on my face and dried it with a thin motel towel. Everything smelled faintly of bleach and old fabric softener. Clean enough to hide the age but not enough to erase it. Back in the room, I sat on the edge of the bed again and picked up another paper. This one a bank statement. Several transactions I didn't recognize were circled. Small amounts at first. Then larger ones. My eyes scanned the dates. All within the past 3 months. My daughter had visited me often during that time, always smiling, always asking if I needed her to pick something up or help with paperwork. I thought she was being kind. I thought she was finally reconnecting after years of distance. But kindness shouldn't come with missing money attached. A lump formed in my throat. I breathed through it slowly, remembering the little girl she used to be. The one who carried her school backpack crooked, the one who held my hand too tight in crowded places. The one who cried when her favorite teacher moved away. Where had that child gone? Or maybe she had always been here, but time had changed the shape of her intentions. I shook the thought off and focused on the folder again. I needed answers. Not memories. One receipt caught my eye. Hardware store. Purchased 2 weeks ago. The items listed made my stomach flip. Gloves, duct tape, a lockpick set. I felt the air in the room shift, colder than before. She bought these things in her own town. Under her own name. No secrecy. No hesitation. That meant she didn't think she'd be caught. Or maybe she believed she deserved what wasn't hers. A sudden tapping sound came from the motel hallway. Slow taps. Not hurried. Just someone walking past. But each step creaked the floorboards, making my nerves jolt each time. I held my breath until the footsteps faded. When I exhaled, my shoulders dropped slightly. Only slightly. I leaned back, gathering the papers into a neat stack, and reached for the small purse I'd brought with me. Inside it was an envelope I hadn't opened in years. One my husband had tucked away before he passed. I hesitated, fingers brushing the edge of it. Tonight wasn't the night to open it. Not yet. But its weight reminded me that he had seen things in people, patterns, behaviors, that I often missed. He'd once warned me to be careful with trust, especially with those closest to us. I never imagined he meant our own daughter. Another sound pulled me from my thoughts. A soft hum of an engine outside. I went still. The lamp's light cast a faint reflection on the window, making it harder to see through the glass. I stood slowly, pulling the curtain back just an inch. A dark shape rolled past. Same height. Same slow movement. The sedan. My pulse quickened, not wildly but with the steady awareness of danger returning. It drove by without stopping. But the message was clear. Someone knew I wasn't at home. I let the curtain fall back into place and sat down again. My mind raced. I needed clarity. Not fear. Fear narrows your vision. Clarity widens it. I forced myself to breathe slowly, counting to 4 on each inhale. When the panic eased, I picked up my phone again. Maybe Daniel wasn't the only person who knew something. Maybe someone else had seen something. A neighbor. A bank teller. A friend of my daughter's. I scrolled through my contacts and paused on a familiar name. Linda, my neighbor from across the street. She often watched everything happening on our block from her porch swing. I hesitated before calling. It was late. But worry outweighed courtesy. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. Hello. Linda, it's me. I'm sorry to bother you. Oh, honey, she said, waking up quickly. Are you all right? I saw some commotion outside earlier. My breath hitched. What kind of commotion? Well, your daughter was at your house tonight. I saw her walking around your porch. She looked upset. And then she left something on your window ledge. What did she leave? I couldn't see clearly. It looked like a small box or envelope. She placed it there and rushed off. A cold sensation spread through my chest. Did you see if anyone else was with her? She paused. I thought I saw a man in the yard earlier today. Not her husband. Someone taller. I assumed it was a repairman. Maybe it wasn't. My stomach tightened. Thank you, Linda. Please don't mention I called. You take care now, she murmured, concern lacing her voice. I ended the call and stared at the phone, feeling a new weight settle in my chest. Someone else. Not her husband. Someone taller. Someone at my home earlier. The picture was changing. Not complete yet, but changing. I placed the phone on the table and rubbed my temples, trying to soothe the tension building behind my eyes. My daughter had planned far more than I thought. She hadn't been acting alone. The purchases, the forged papers, the late-night visits. They were part of a larger pattern I hadn't seen fully. Another tap. Same rhythm. I stepped quietly toward the door, feet barely making a sound. I didn't look through the peephole. Something told me not to. Instead, I pressed my ear to the wood. Silence. Then a low voice. Not threatening. Not familiar. Just one word. Ma'am. My breath faltered. That wasn't my daughter. Not her husband. Not the motel clerk. I stepped back, heart thudding. The voice came again, softer. Ma'am. I think you dropped something outside. Something cold rippled through me. I hadn't dropped anything. I didn't answer. Didn't move. After a pause, footsteps faded down the walkway. I waited a full minute before looking through the peephole. The walkway was empty. I moved back toward the bed slowly, the room suddenly feeling too small, too quiet. The stack of papers felt heavier than ever. My daughter's handwriting stared back at me from the top sheet. What was she involved in? Who was helping her? How long had she been planning this? Fresh questions. More confusion. And a growing fear I didn't want to name yet. But one thing was clear as I sat there in that dim motel light. This wasn't just about money. Or paperwork. Or even the axe. Something deeper lay beneath it all. And the closer I looked, the more I realized. I didn't know my own child anymore. That realization sat with me long after the motel room fell silent again, and even when morning finally pried its way through the thin curtains, the weight of that truth pressed against my ribs like something permanent. I hadn't slept. Not really. Every sound, every car passing outside, every distant door closing kept pulling me back from drifting off. So when I heard a soft knock at my door just after sunrise, I was already sitting upright on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, my suitcase at my feet. Ma'am? A voice called quietly, not the same one from the night before. This one was steadier, older. I opened the door with the chain still latched. Daniel stood there, hands in his coat pockets, his eyes scanning me with a mix of concern and purpose. He looked exactly the way I remembered, tall, lean, silver at his temples, with that calm expression that made people tell him things they'd hide from others. You look tired, he said gently. I exhaled. I feel worse. Let's get you somewhere safer, he said. And then we'll talk. I grabbed my coat, double-checked the room and followed him to his car. The morning air was cool, crisp, carrying the smell of nearby pine trees. People were just beginning to check out of the motel, dragging suitcases across gravel. No suspicious sedan in sight. That eased me only a little. Inside the car, Daniel waited until we were on the highway before speaking. What happened after your call last night? He asked. I told him everything. The slow-moving sedan, the strange knock, the voice that tried to lure me toward the door. He stayed quiet, eyes focused on the road. His silence said more than his words ever could. Someone is watching you, he finally said. Not just your daughter. I swallowed hard. Then who? He hesitated. That's what we're going to find out. We drove into town, stopping at a small diner on the outskirts. The kind of place with red vinyl booths, faded photos on the walls, and coffee that tasted more like memory than caffeine. We sat in a corner booth. I wrapped my hands around a warm mug, grateful for the heat. Tell me about the documents, Daniel said. I opened my purse and handed him the folder. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows tightening at the signatures, the transfers, the receipts. When he reached the hardware store receipt, he let out a slow, controlled breath. This wasn't impulsive, he said. She's been building toward something. I know, I whispered, feeling a sting behind my eyes. But why? Why would she do this to me? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pushed the folder aside and leaned in. Let me ask you something, he said. Has she been under financial strain? I nodded. They've had trouble. Jobs changing. Bills piling up. They always seemed stressed. That's often where these situations start, he said softly. Pressure. Desperation. Influence. Influence. That word struck something inside me. I remembered Linda's call. There might be someone else, I said. Someone taller. She was seen with him earlier. Daniel nodded slowly. Then there's more to uncover. After breakfast, he suggested we return to town discreetly and observe. If anything is happening, he said, people will reveal themselves under pressure. We drove toward my neighborhood, staying 2 blocks away, near the small park where children played in the afternoons. It was empty now. Only a gardener cleaning fallen leaves. The sun was brighter, cutting through the quiet streets. Daniel parked the car under a tree out of sight. Stay here, he said gently. Let me check something. He stepped out and walked down the sidewalk, hands casual in his pockets. I watched him disappear around the corner toward my house. My fingers twisted nervously in my lap. The world felt too still. Too fragile. Minutes dragged on like hours. When he returned, his face told me everything before he even spoke. "There's a police car outside your home," he said. My heart lurched. "Why?" "Has someone called them?" he said. "Not me. Not you. Someone else." A cold ripple spread through me. "My daughter." "Likely," he said. But the officers looked confused. And concerned. Something was said that made them act quickly. "What did she tell them?" I whispered. He took a slow breath. "She may have tried to report you missing. Or claim you were unstable. Or suggest someone else had been in the house. Could be any number of things." My jaw clenched. "She's covering herself. Or accelerating whatever she planned," he said. I felt a sharp ache in my chest. The world outside the car suddenly felt too bright, too open, as if everyone could see the fear crawling through me. But then something shifted. A spark. Strength I didn't know I still had. "What do we do now?" I asked. His answer was steady. "Now we pull every thread she's tried to hide." We drove straight to the bank next. Daniel wanted to speak to the branch manager, a man he'd worked with years ago. I had met him only once before. A polite man with thinning hair and a habit of adjusting his tie nervously. But when we arrived, he wasn't in his office. His door was open. A young employee told us he had been called into a meeting upstairs. I felt my stomach tighten. Something was changing quickly. We waited in the lobby. People came and went, depositing checks, printing statements, carrying envelopes under their arms. Every minute felt longer than the last. Finally, the branch manager, Mr. Collins, appeared at the top of the stairs. His cheeks were flushed, his tie crooked, his eyes darting around the room. When he saw me, he froze for a half-second, then forced a smile. "Ma'am," he said, walking over, "I wasn't expecting you." "I'm sure you weren't," I said quietly. Daniel cut in. "We need to talk somewhere private." Mr. Collins hesitated, glancing at employees behind him. Then he led us to his office. Once inside, he closed the door, locked it, and sank into his chair. "What's going on?" I asked. He rubbed his forehead. "I received an anonymous report this morning. Someone claimed you were confused. Signed papers without understanding them. Suggested you needed oversight." My breath caught. "She reported me?" "That's what it sounds like," he said. I felt heat rise in my chest. "And you believed it?" He shook his head quickly. "No. But the board did. They launched a temporary hold on your accounts until an investigation clears things up." My heart dropped. "A hold?" "Yes," he said softly. "A freeze. It's policy." I closed my eyes for a moment, hands trembling. My own daughter had done this. She wasn't just forging signatures. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was preparing the world to think I was incapable. I opened my eyes. "She wants everything under her control." Daniel leaned forward. "Show us what she accessed." Mr. Collins hesitated, torn between duty and panic. But eventually he pulled up records on his computer. Transaction logs. Access history. Digital footprints. What I saw made my stomach twist. She'd requested copies of my identification. She'd asked questions about my will. She'd accessed loan applications in my name. Not completed, just opened. Testing the system. Testing what she could do without raising alarms. "She's been planning," I whispered. "And someone helped her," Daniel added, pointing at a separate log. "This employee accessed your file after hours." A name appeared. One I didn't recognize. "Who is that?" I asked. "A new hire," Collins said. "Came 3 months ago." 3 months. The same time everything else began. My hands went cold. "He's the taller man." Daniel gave a single nod. Everything connected now, threads twisting together into something darker than I had imagined. When we stepped out of the office, I felt hollow. Not weak. Not broken. Just emptied of the illusions I had clung to for too long. Outside, the air was warmer. People moved normally, unaware that my life was unraveling publicly and quietly at the same time. "Tao what?" I asked Daniel. "Now," he said, "we make sure the truth hits before her lies." We drove back toward my neighborhood, careful and slow. When we turned onto my street, I saw the police car again. Officers talking to neighbors. One officer holding a clipboard. And my daughter, standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed, pretending to look worried. She didn't know we were watching from a distance. But I watched her closely. Her posture. Her forced concern. Her glance toward my house every few seconds. Her tension when an officer questioned her. She was waiting for something. Expecting something. And whatever she expected, she was sure she'd get it. Daniel parked 2 houses down. Let her talk, he said. Let her build her story. I nodded, hands gripping my purse tightly. For a moment I wondered if she sensed me. If she could feel her mother watching her in silence. When her eyes swept the street, they paused for a second, not on us but on a car behind us. The dark sedan. It was back. Parked further down this time. Watching her. Watching the officers. Watching everything. My pulse quickened. Do you see that? I whispered. Daniel followed my gaze. His jaw tightened. Yes, he said softly. And now we know something else. What? He kept his eyes on the sedan. She isn't the one in control anymore. A chill slid through me. Before I could speak, the officer's radio crackled, his posture stiffened, and he hurried toward my daughter with urgency. Whatever he said made her face drain of color. She glanced toward the house, then toward the street, then toward her husband's car parked crookedly on the curb. And in that moment, everything she tried to hide began collapsing. One officer took her arm gently. Another approached the taller man walking out of my house. And the neighbors whispered, watching from porches. Her world, every piece she'd constructed, was tilting. And I stood there 2 houses away, watching the beginning of the unraveling I never wanted but could no longer avoid. This was the day everything she built began to fall apart. And as I stood 2 houses away, watching her world tilt under the weight of her own choices, something inside me settled. Not joy. Not triumph. Just a steady, grounding certainty that the truth had finally stepped out into daylight, whether she wanted it to or not. I stayed in Daniel's car, half hidden behind the tinted glass, while the officers questioned her again. She kept looking around nervously as if checking whether someone else was watching her. Her eyes darted toward the dark sedan, then back to the officers, and each time her expression tightened a little more. She wasn't just worried. She was afraid. I didn't move. I didn't wave. I didn't draw attention. My presence would have twisted everything, turned truth into confusion. So I sat still, watching quietly, allowing things to unfold exactly as they needed to. One officer stepped away to take a radio call. The other stayed with her. My daughter wrapped her arms around herself, her shoulders drawn inward like someone bracing against a wind only she could feel. The taller man, the new bank employee, stood a few steps away from her, hands stiff at his sides. He looked even more nervous than she did. When the officer approached him, he swallowed hard and stared at the ground. I leaned closer to the window. That's him, I said quietly. The one Linda mentioned. Daniel nodded. He's the connection between the documents and your daughter. And possibly the one behind the sedan. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My stomach twisted with a mixture of betrayal and something darker. Something close to disbelief. I still couldn't understand how she had reached this point. How she had allowed herself to be guided by someone who clearly had his own motives. The officer on the radio turned back toward them. His expression was different now. More serious, more certain. He gestured for both of them to follow him. My daughter hesitated. For the first time she looked small. Unprepared. Not the confident woman who once stood on my porch with an axe behind her husband's back. She whispered something to the taller man, but he didn't answer. He kept his eyes fixed straight ahead, jaw clenched. The 3 of them walked toward the police car. The moment my daughter realized she wasn't just being questioned, she was being escorted, she stopped walking abruptly, shaking her head. Wait, what? No, I didn't do anything wrong. I reported it. I reported her missing. I was trying to help. Her voice cracked in a way I had never heard before. Not even when she was a little girl. Not even when she lost her first job. Not even when she argued with me months ago about finances. This crack, this fear, was new. The officer spoke calmly, but his tone left no room for misunderstanding. Ma'am, you need to come with us. We have new information. She turned toward the street again as if searching for someone who could save her. Her eyes passed over our car without knowing I was inside. Then she saw the sedan. Her whole face changed, fear sharpened, panic rising like a tide. She stepped back from the officer. No. I don't want to talk in front of, she pointed toward the sedan. But the sedan didn't move. It just idled, humming low. The officer frowned. Is there someone in that vehicle connected to this? Her mouth opened, then closed. The taller man looked at her sharply, a warning hidden in his glare. That was it. That glance. The truth slipped into place. He's controlling her, I whispered. He pushed her into all this. Daniel didn't respond at first. His jaw tightened, eyes focused long and hard on the tall man. Maybe. Or maybe she let herself be controlled because it benefited her. The officer gently took her arm again. She didn't fight it. Her knees seemed to buckle and she let the officer guide her toward the car. For a second she glanced over her shoulder, toward my house, then toward the sedan, then toward the street, like a person searching for an escape that simply didn't exist anymore. Her husband arrived moments later, rushing down the sidewalk from wherever he had been hiding. His hair was a mess. His face pale. What's going on? He snapped, walking toward the officers. Why are you taking her? What happened? He looked frantic. Not protective, frantic. Like his carefully constructed plan was slipping through cracks he couldn't seal. The officers spoke to him too, but he kept glancing toward the taller man almost accusingly. The tension between them crackled in the air. And then the final shift happened. An unmarked car pulled up beside the police cruiser. 2 investigators stepped out. My daughter's knees went weak. She covered her mouth with both hands, shaking her head as if she could undo everything by refusing to acknowledge it. No, she whispered. No, please. Her husband backed away from her, inch by inch, like a man distancing himself from a sinking ship. The taller man grabbed his own hair in both hands, pacing in small, jerky steps. And I felt an ache in my chest, a deep, sharp ache, because even though I had wanted the truth to surface, I hadn't expected it to feel this heavy. The investigators spoke briefly to the officers before approaching my daughter. Ma'am, one of them said, we need to ask you some questions about the attempted transfer of assets, unauthorized access to private accounts, and potential coercion of bank personnel. My heart dropped. They knew. All of it. The forged signatures. The nighttime visits. The coordinated lies. The planned takeover of my estate. Everything. The taller man tried to walk away. One investigator moved to block him. Sir, we'll need you to stay right here. I didn't force anyone, he blurted. She came to me. She said her mother was slipping and... My daughter's head whipped toward him. You told me it was legal. You said you'd help. Her voice cracked again, louder this time. The neighbors began stepping out onto porches, drawn by the noise. Her husband stepped forward, pointing at the taller man with a trembling finger. He planned the signatures. He got the paperwork. He said the house would be ours. My daughter turned on him next, stunned. You were the one who said we should hurry before she changed the will. You said she wouldn't survive another winter. My stomach clenched. I had heard enough. Daniel looked at me. It's time. I nodded. Yes. It is. We stepped out of the car together and walked toward the cluster of officers and neighbors. Heads turned. Conversations halted. My daughter froze completely when she saw me. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. She looked at me the way a child looks at a burning building, like she couldn't comprehend how the flames got there or how to put them out. Mom, she whispered. Her voice trembled, broken. The officers didn't move. They all watched. I stood a few feet away from her, the morning sun warming my face, the weight of the past months lifting at last. She swallowed hard. I thought you were gone. I thought. You thought what? I said softly. My voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was steady. That I would disappear quietly? She covered her mouth again, tears spilling over. I didn't think it would go this far. I held her gaze. You walked to my door with an axe behind your back. It went as far as you chose to take it. A few neighbors gasped quietly. Her husband spoke up then, voice trembling. We were desperate. We made mistakes. But we didn't mean. You meant every step, I said calmly. Every signature. Every lie. Every late-night visit. You didn't trip into this. You worked for it. The taller man stepped forward. She was unstable, he said, pointing at me. She didn't know what she was doing. I turned toward him with a cold, tired clarity. The only unstable part was believing you could steal a lifetime of work from a woman who has survived more than you've ever had to. The officers motioned for him to step back. My daughter reached a trembling hand toward me. Please help me. I don't want to go with them. I looked at her hand. The same hand that once held mine in grocery stores, school hallways, and parking lots. The same hand that wrote birthday cards and slammed doors in teenage arguments. The same hand that tried to sign my name for things I never agreed to. I didn't take it. You taught me something, I said gently. That love without trust becomes a weapon. And I won't let you use it against me anymore. Her knees gave out and she sank to the curb, crying into her hands. The officers approached her slowly, respectfully, because even in such moments, dignity mattered. She didn't resist. She didn't argue. She didn't look at me again. He knew. It was over. As they guided her into the car, Daniel stood beside me, silent. The taller man was taken next. Her husband tried to run, but another officer stopped him at the end of the street. The neighbors murmured, stunned, pointing, whispering. I didn't stay to watch the doors close. I turned toward my house instead. My old porch. My familiar steps. My quiet garden. Everything that was mine. Daniel walked with me until I reached the gate. Are you all right? He asked. I nodded slowly. I will be. The morning breeze brushed my cheek. The air smelled like fresh leaves and cut grass. For the first time in months, I inhaled without feeling fear tighten my chest. I climbed the steps, touched the doorframe, and looked out over the neighborhood that had witnessed everything. They tried to break my life, I whispered. Instead, they rebuilt my strength. And with that, I stepped inside, finally fully home. If this story touched your heart, shocked you, or made you hold your breath, don't leave without subscribing. I share powerful, emotional stories every week, and I'd love to have you here for the next one.